But yeah, you could. You got what?
Kathy, hope you're all ready to go.
Ready to order your
Okay, thank you. Seem to have a hard time getting a hold of it. Oh, she was on the test. She was hoping she was going to be back.
I'm assuming she was on that, which is just pulled in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Get me out of here. Also, don't leave. Yeah. Yeah. All right, ladies. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Thank you for coming. It's a regular council meeting, Monday, April the 8th. Call this meeting to order. Approval of the agenda, introduction late items.
Yes, we have a few. There's an on-table package in front of you. It's on the third page. There's one item regarding item 3.8 of the agenda, regarding the Seniors Connection Collaboration Project. And then we received 10 letters from the public regarding the CRC 10-year renewal, which is item 8.2 of the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I have one about the noise policy.
There's a noise
Should be a
bylaw.
little package in front of you as well somewhere.
I can't find anything.
This one.
Page 3.
Yeah, got it. All right, thank
Oh,
you.
we got it. Thank you.
Okay, everything under control? Perfect. Okay, so the approval of the agenda. Everybody okay with it? Maureen? Move, second. Thank you, Rob. All in favor? Thank you. Allison, you got any issues?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comments. Hopefully we got it.
We have 4, starting with Andre Charlotte in support of the Islands Trust.
Okay.
Good afternoon, your worship and councillor. To our disappointment, my wife Anne and I, the question once again seems to be, are we remaining member of the Island Trust or are we not? As long-time resident of this community, we have always demonstrated our concern for the well-being of the island and of its residents. We firmly believe that it is irresponsible from some individual to want the Bowen Island municipality to separate from the Island Trust in discontinuing our membership. What is the true reason of the proponents? Some petty financial gain? For the loss of a powerful voice regarding the overall protection of our natural environment, the basis of our way of life? It is not by division that we obtain positive results and security. Without a long-term vision of unity, there would not be a Canadian Confederation. The United States of America and NATO would not exist. In the Lower Mainland, why is there Metro Vancouver? What replacement of the Island Trust is being offered by those paddling backwards to withdraw from 45 years old organization that works. It is not sufficient for us all to witness the damaging effect of division in Europe with Brexit. Do we not have anything better for this community than inciting division? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Cooper?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you briefly on the subject of the Cape Breton tourist docks. How much time do I have?
Well, we'll give you 5 minutes.
I'll try to do less than that. I welcome the opportunity to speak to the matter before the meeting tonight with respect to the renewal of the dock licenses. Actually, it's a transition from a temporary license to a permanent license is the way I understand the special permission that's being requested and the referral from the province for your comments. So just by way of background, I sent an email today. It details the subject in greater detail than I'll present, but I want to flag a few things. First of all, these docks were never meant to be. They were prohibited by the covenant that was placed on the lands when the developers who purchased the land for speculative development chose to proceed with a 59 lot subdivision. The municipality, the CAO, required a 30 meter setback, do not disturb covenant, which was meant to prohibit the emplacement of any structures, docks or buildings or anything on the foreshore lands, because they're very important. They've got high public recreation value, they've got very high ecological value as coastal bluff ecosystems. So the owners contrived, by not actually physically placing the structure on the land within that 30 meter zone, to assert their rights to build a structure and get a dock license water license from the province, which council of the day in 2013 chose not to oppose. So the province went ahead and granted the 5-year temporary licenses under the terms of the license that's being replaced now. And we, as you know, in 2013 fought the docks long and hard as a public because of the desire to protect their values, and failed. The docks were grandfathered and allowed to be built. At least 4 of them were, and then the 5th one following a court ruling. And they've fouled the Cape. They don't work. They're constantly broken. There hasn't been a float put on lot 6 since the time it was built. And lot number 11 and lot number 13 have been constantly broken. So the issues before you are how to respond to this referral. And I set out 4 specific issues with regard to the temporary license nature, and that one of the reasons they were given a temporary license is that the area that the extent of the docks would take was going to be resurveyed. So if you choose to affirm continuation of this use, that provision should be dealt with. Secondly, the covenant violations. The docks at lot 11 and 13 sit above the high water mark. We've established that at the king tides and taken photos and submitted them to staff. It's proven. They are a contravention of the covenant. The dock conditions, as I say, it states in the staff report that it has to be a continuous use of 6 months. Well, 2 of the docks, 11 and 13, have never been in use for that 6-month period. Lot 6 has never had a float put on it. It's never been used, period. It's not even attached to the land yet. Safety issues, you've seen kids jumping off and having a good time at Pebbly Beach. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, and somebody will get hurt on those docks one day. Kids have been able to go around first of all, there wasn't a barrier, and then they're allowed to go around it. And when they're broken, particularly lot 13, the ramp's hanging at an angle, and you could literally fall off a broken section of the road. Legal standing, I think that if there's going to be a continuation, it ought not to be permanent, and there ought to be specific conditions under which the docks can be continued, and if they're not kept in a reasonable state of upkeep and repair, that they're forced to be removed. So those are my comments on the docks. Appreciate your consideration of them, and before I leave, I would also like to endorse the Islands Trust and I just want to reflect back to the 1990s when we had 2 referendums concerning becoming a municipality. And I think that, you know, it has to be recognized that we are constituted as an island municipality under the Islands Trust. If there's any intention to leave the Islands Trust, then you must take it back to the public for a referendum and consideration of the matter. It's not something that is in your mandate to decide on the behalf of an island public. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Oh, question, Doug? Doug?
Does Hope have a copy of your written remarks?
Yes, it was
My
a lead
handwriting
item.
is illegible.
It's the email that was circulated earlier
Yeah.
today.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Gauss regarding 1473 Bylaw.
Good evening. I'm not quite as organized as the previous 2 speakers. Hi, I actually just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Karen Gauss, and I just wanted to thank you guys. You've made 2 site visits out to our place. I just wanted to thank you. I know it's in your free time, and I just wanted to say thank you. And then I'm just hoping we've answered all your questions between my husband and myself, but I only managed to read the reports and the letters on Friday afternoon. So I just thought I'd come, and if you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them. That's it.
Anybody have any questions?
Good.
You're good.
Good, thank you, thank you.
Maris Poole regarding 1492 Williams Road.
No, I thought that was my address. I put my address down. It's regarding 3 things.
Okay.
The docks, Islands Trust, and property taxes. The increase in property taxes. So I'll try to be brief. I don't have anything written out. I just want to emphasize that it is critical that your planner look at the recommendations made by Doug Cooper and that he be sent back to include some of the issues raised by Doug Cooper in his report. I feel that the report is inadequate for you to make any kind of decision on whether these docks should be permanent. And I just want to endorse the comments made by Doug Cooper because I think that there are some serious problems with accepting that these docks should go ahead. I have no idea what it means to ask the ministry to ensure diligent use of the land. Perhaps you know what that means. If that means using the docks, well, I think anyone who's lived on Bowen Island knows that those docks are really useless. They're only intended to basically encourage buyers to believe that they might be able to moor their boat there. And I think especially given the windy storms we've had, that it's clear those docks will never be used, other than to try and encourage people who don't know Bowen that they might be able to have a dock in front of their property. So I encourage council to really consider this issue. I think it's extremely important for you to have all the facts before you make any decision. The second issue I'm here before is Islands Trust. I didn't send another letter. I have sent a letter to council fairly recently on the Islands Trust. I also sent one to the Undercurrent. I fully support our staying in the Islands Trust, of course, and I support the tax increase for the Islands Trust. I also endorse what Andre Chalat said about this is just inciting division in our community at a time when there's really no need for it. The third issue, which is kind of related because I haven't heard much comment from council about the tax increase. All I heard was what I read in the paper about the fact that our 6.7% tax increase this year is supposed to be, yay, it's good, it's less than last year, which was over 8%. Well, for the time I was on council and for many council terms, it was kept at 3% or below, and it was kept at certainly no more than the cost of living. Every single member of this council was elected on housing affordability, everyone. What is more important on this island than keeping our taxes affordable? We are looking at a significant tax increase, well above the cost of living. For property taxes, we're looking at a parcel tax increase across the island, which parcel taxes by their very nature are unequal, of course, because $500,000 place pays the same as a $6 million home. So we're also looking, no doubt, at an increase in the water. So we're looking at significant increases for people who already own their homes on the island. And I would ask council, it's too late for this time, but I think that you need to be really cautious about continuing to raise taxes. 8% last year, 6.7% this year, that's just not good enough. And, you know, that certainly things like water and garbage, they're separate from the taxes. So none of us get homeowners grant benefit from, you know, any reduction in those parcel taxes and the water cost. So I'd ask you, when you're considering the budget in the next year, to consider reducing, not necessarily reducing the taxes, but certainly not having anything like a 6 or 8% tax increase. I think that's where your focus as council should be, and not on dividing this community by raising something like the Islands Trust. And that's all my comments. Thank you for your time.
Questions? Thanks, Mayor. Is that it? Okay, thanks. All right. Consent agenda, does anybody have anything that they would like to? Okay, Hope?
It's 3.1.
Yes.
And the recommendation should be special counsel, not regular counsel.
Okay.
And then 3.2 should be regular counsel, not special counsel. My apologies.
No worries. Right, anything else?
Hope, I think 3.2 is right, because we had a special council meeting before we moved into a closed meeting that afternoon.
Oh, sorry, you're correct, Allison.
So it's only 3.1.
Okay.
I'd like to pull 3.4.
2.4, Allison. Okay. We'll put that in section 12. Anybody else? Oh, that's great. Okay, so the recommendation is council approve the items as outlined in the April 8, 2019 amended consent agenda. Thank you. All in favor? And okay, so the delegation. Wonderful. Long Island Transportation Society. Good afternoon. Lone Express Bus. Great. Sorry, yeah. And Dave would like to give us. David's just going to give us.
Yeah, I just want to give a brief introduction. So this goes back to a little bit of the backstory here. This goes back to about 5 years ago when we had the refit of the cap, the Queen Cap, and so we had that express bus, kind of short-term experiment going downtown. And a couple of things happened right away. One was that it saved a huge amount of time for a whole lot of people, and so they started riding it. The other thing was a whole lot of people who were pretty good at stuff started working together. Working together on all kinds of things, including helping Peter keep his bus going, getting, for instance, that status of independent transit service for the bus. And so people have been kind of working with Peter all along. Those who ride the bus kind of are familiar with that. And just this last summer, several of us got together to try to make sure that this would become a permanent part of our transportation structure. And I was part of that group, and that's the group that's here. I then withdrew myself when I was on council in case there was any conflicts of interest, but that's the group that's here today, looking at how we can turn the transportation improvements we've had in the last little while into something permanent for Long Island. So.
Good afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm here representing the Bowen Island Transportation Society, William Barrera, and I have my peers here in the back, Kate, Dave, and Richard. There's another one member, Andrew, who couldn't make it tonight. So I'm briefly going to go a little bit of the presentation in the history, and then there's going to be a big ask. It's not money, but we'll talk about that later. Basically, we are an incorporated non-for-profit society as of last year, composed of Bowen Island residents wishing to improve the transportation options of the island and in the island and in the lower mainland. Focus on Bowen Island residents. Who are we? Richard Smith, he's a communication professor, 15, sorry, my eyes, 25 years in education. It's a Bowen Islander resident since, I don't know, Richard? 95, right? So he's understands the commuting pretty well, right? Dave Greaves, he's a nonprofit director, working in social entrepreneur for many years, and a Bowen Island resident for 5 years, I believe. Kate Coffey, she is, sorry, my eyes, business analyst, 35 years experience in the financial sector and investment and management. She's focused a lot of volunteering and a resident for what, 10? 2000, so 19 years. Plus, she's a 5-day commuter, right? Andrew Brozer, he's a software engineer, worked for Oracle and really high-end interesting projects, right? He's been an Islander since 2011, I believe, commuter, and really engaging in how to make this better. And myself, I'm an industrial engineer, been in the financial industry for 23 years. I'm also a big soccer player, part of the board of Bowen Island Football Club, and commute 4 days a week. Right? So this is dear to our hearts to improve everybody's livelihood in the island. A little bit of a story as captured before. This really started in early 2015 when Peter was granted to provide the service between the Lower Mainland and the terminal while we were upgrading our ferry, right? Through that process, we kind of not pushed, but really helped Peter continue the service going forward, and he managed to keep going on it. One day we had a late ferry and people were tired and wanted to get home, and we said, why don't we call the water taxi? And we did, and it worked perfectly. It was a beauty. The next day we did the same thing. A week after that, we had already established a service with Brian Bylaw, and he finally agreed to the service. He was nervous because he didn't know about the ridership, the volume, but roughly right now we probably have on each boat around 25 to 35 passengers. Right? Some of the Peter's Bus passengers do take the BC ferry. And then in fall of 2018, Bowen Island Transportation Society was formally born, right? And it was born a little bit out of, Peter has had an excellent vision, really dedicated to the business, but has run through those struggles on the model he runs with the buses. And the whole ridership and community decided to, how do we help Peter through this bump? And that's when Bowen Island Transportation Society was formally born. Let's analyze a little bit of the commute comparison, right? And this is only an analysis on the afternoon ridership, right? So comparing downtown to the island, right? If you do it by car, it's really takes you between 50 minutes and an hour and 20 minutes, depending on your arrival on the ferry and your wait time and traffic. If you do it on the bus, it takes probably 20 to 25 more minutes, so between 70 and up to almost 3 hours, right? And I see some of the heads nodding because I think we've all gone through that pain of missing the ferry over 5 minutes to get the ferry, and boom, the cut-off happens, right? And then there's the water taxi, right? There's no wait time waiting for the bus because there's a tracking system in downtown, so you know where Peter's coming. If he's late, you're able to delay getting out of work, and you'll know you'll always get on time. Get into the bus, goes directly to Horseshoe Bay Docks, stops at the ferry if anybody needs to ride, and then we get into the boat right away. Takes sometimes 35 minutes. That's how good it is from downtown, right? So huge time saver, right? From a cost perspective, it is very similar, and so for $3 more, you're probably getting an hour more of your life, if not more, right? That's kind of our analysis. And I think one of the things that we really cannot quantify, but is the stress relief, right? Because I saw heads nodding on when you're getting into that ferry, wondering if you're going to make the cutoff or not. If you're driving, is it going to be full? Do I have to wait another hour? So with this integrator system, we're really able to get that stress out of the system, out of the users. So what are some of the facts and benefits, right? We have on a daily basis between 75 and 100 individual passengers riding morning and afternoon or one of the two routes. We estimate at least at a minimum 300 hours are given back to the community by those individuals that are able to arrive here earlier to the island. And we have a membership in our Facebook group of 973 adults that are interested in making sure that this system keeps going, right? What are the benefits? As Eric stated earlier, it's fast, reliable, stress-free, at an affordable price, right? It contributes to on-island employment, right? We get Peter as bus driver. Brian Biddlecombe has managed to add permanent employment to 2 individuals for the afternoon shifts, right? It proves the availability of passenger ferries, right? Kind of, we know that Horseshoe Bay is going to go through an expansion and remodeling, and I don't know what the plan is for Boyne Island, but it would be, I don't see it really feasible in adding a bigger ferry and expanding, while this proves of, you know what, there's alternatives between the ferry and outside the ferry, right? It assists with the capacity on the roads and ferries by reducing cars, and it's around gas emission, it helps in the reduction, right? What is our ridership saying, right? 93% of the people we surveyed a couple of weeks ago want to go further. They want to purchase a membership, they want to participate, they want to give time to see how to make this a reality, right? This service gives me more time to be with my family, allows me to stay healthy. I've joined the co-ed soccer team. That's kind of what we're giving back to the community, right? I'm not worried about missing ferry cutoff, and I know I can be home on time to pick up my kids from daycare, right? It's improving the life quality of the island. What's our plan? In the short term, we want to focus on getting the core service running between downtown and the island. So we have had several conversations with Peter and Brian, and they're very much on board. Brian is fully supportive of what we're trying to do, and he's saying, look, as long as we have a bus that runs, I'll have a boat there to make it run. With Peter, as you probably know, he's had some issues with the bus, but right now we are in negotiations with him to buy the system from him, right? And part of what we're trying to do also is that this group wants to recognize Peter for having the fortitude and the vision to make this happen. And Peter has mentioned that he's in a 3-year plan of retirement, and we really want to be part of that. That's also our helping him with this, right? Once we finalize the negotiation with Peter and understand the needs of cash flow, we're on a plan of raising capital through the community, right? Through a membership basis, right? So we're not going to ask any public funding or anything. We really want to remain independent, and we want to increase the community participation once we have the structure up and running. So what's been achieved up to now, right? Again, we are in negotiations with Peter. It's confidential, but they're going what I believe are on the right track, and our goal is within the next 60-90 days. We're not only finished with the negotiations, but we probably have already engaged the public to that next step, the community, right? We're raising capital, right? We've done a feasibility analysis on understanding the business. We've done our due diligence with Peter's business, and we see that it's something that can be not only kept sustainable, but there's different ideas of how to grow it to increase the benefit for the island. Like mentioned earlier, we have Brian's full support, right? And we right now have a beta application for an app, iPhone app, that tracks both bus and boat, with the idea that we integrate the payment services of both systems, right? So we will manage to have reservations. You reserve on the bus, you reserve right away on the boat, and the ride is already reserved for you all the way through the system. Brian also welcomes this because it takes a little bit of headache around collecting money and stuff, so it will be a win-win for everyone, right? And then we're working on the community participation, we're working on an engagement plan once we finalize the negotiations with Peter, right? We cannot put the saddle in front of the cart in front of the horse, right? So our long-term plan, again, we will focus probably, if we're successful with the negotiations, stabilizing and ensure the core service is up and running and sustainable, right? Our analysis shows that it can be done. One thing is doing it, the other is putting it into implementation, so we expect probably a year to 2 years to really be focused on that. And then based on the membership and what this non-for-profit society involved, we'll be looking to other transportation needs for the island and its residents. Right? What the Bowen Island can do for Bowen Island Transportation Society are asked, right? We don't want any financial support right now. We really would like the endorsement of Bowen Island Transportation Society with BC Ferry TransLink and any other stakeholders that we would deem important to deal with, right? We want a parking for our buses. We're planning on purchasing an additional 2 buses, 1 or 2 to be on island, and so we would need that support from the island. We were thinking around the yards or any place that the Bowen Island and the municipality sees fit for this, right? We want to be endorsed as the operational transit provider of Bowen Island, right? It would include Bowen Island Transportation Society and future transportation planning and needs. So we want to be involved in the table with BEMTEC and with others, so we can act as the independent body to make some of the things happen that sometimes through regulation that public entities are not permitted. Right. I forgot to mention that one of the big endorsements we would need with BC Ferries is a place to eventually park the bus during the night in town. That's something that if we manage to go through the hump with Peter, it's probably a key thing that we will need your support. And with that, I'll open up to questions, and I'm as much as an expert as one of these individuals in back.
Maureen? Thank you, Maureen.
Could you go back to the ask slide, please?
Yeah.
That one. The endorsement of your plans with BC Ferries and with TransLink. So the ask for BC Ferries is a parking spot. With TransLink, what is the ask?
Well, right now, first we're going to start negotiating how do we transfer the service that Peter provides to Bowen Island Transportation Society. We don't know at what point we're going to be asked, do we have support from the municipality, so we're just getting ready for that, just in case.
Right. So that the municipality would probably need to know, like with ferries, it's a parking spot. That's clear, we know what you're asking there. With TransLink, just as you move forward, it would be helpful to get clarity around what that is.
Totally.
Yeah. And the endorsed operational transit provider on Bowen Island, is that a status that, what is that? Is that a status that the municipality confers or that TransLink confers, or?
Yeah, it's more of an acknowledgement of, you know what, there's this non-for-profit group, independent, non-public, that is willing to run transportation services for the island residents.
Okay,
right.
Thank you.
On a high level.
And that would be, you're looking for an exclusivity on that?
No, we're not
Okay.
looking for an exclusivity, but we want to be kind of the knowing that hopefully we become exclusive because we are able to provide great service at the lowest cost. That's our goal. But I do believe in free markets and free competition, so welcome that, and we'll be able to provide a better service.
So?
I just have a question about the airplane, and it says future transportation.
Runway.
Float planes, no, really, that was just one of the logos around. It's a vision.
Just
Yeah,
checking.
it's a vision. We don't want an airport.
I thought maybe you were gonna have express runs out to the air, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, we have a bunch of ideas, but again, we first want to get the existing service settled before we jump. I'm gonna spill a little bit the beans of what, if we manage to get it firm our negotiation with Peter, one of the things we've talked is we would have 2 drivers, so we would add 1 more employment to the island, Peter would be doing the morning runs from the first run up to the 3:45 run plus some shuttles during the day. He will then exchange with the second driver at 3:45 here. What we would do is keep the same 3 runs, but we want to try to expand additional runs in the North Shore, picking up some of the kids and the people who are stranded in North Shore with after-school activities, right? The feedback that we constantly get is people move away from the island, not because their kids are commuting for school, it's because they're doing activities in the other side and then they commute with the whole it's the whole family who's spending the evenings in town, right? So that's kind of our initial vision. Other than that, we don't have plans to expand our service right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sir.
Listen, thank you by the way for this. This doesn't happen by accident, so much
Yeah.
appreciated. And someone also spent some time on Peter's Bus. To date, Peter's Bus being pretty much on a regular basis, Monday to Friday. Is that still initially what is anticipated, or do you see that becoming expanded possibly in the future over the weekends?
We want to expand it, like I said, we want to service the island transportation needs. Right now, we've identified the commuter as the key one right now, with 100 plus riders a day. And like I said, we want to expand to the evening activities that we see that the pressure point. But there's been talk around having runs potentially during the day for some of the elderly, even taking directly to North Vancouver, which it's hard to commute to, right? Especially going to the doctors and stuff. We talk about those ideas. So again, there's a bunch of ideas. We've decided to go slowly, and the first year or so is really to make sure that we're able to run this service in a sustainable way, right? If we manage to do that, then we'll figure out what are our growth plans in a year's time or now.
Okay, Allison, go ahead.
Just a curiosity question about where the ridership came from. Have you ever surveyed, or do you know how many of your riders were people that were taking their cars downtown versus?
We don't have specific surveys. However, I do know that there's a lot of people that have stepped down from a car and are now riding the bus. I think David, you were going to mention.
Yeah, way back when we were applying for that service with TransLink, one of the things we promised to do was get that data, and I don't remember the numbers, but there were quite a few people who had decided to switch from their cars. I don't remember the numbers now, because that was, 3-4 years ago, but that was a significant number of people.
Yeah.
And the other one, I guess, is the TransLink approval, I'm assuming is because Peter has permission to run the bus.
Peter has, his company has a
And if it's
permission.
taken over by another society, that permission. has
That's
to be
exactly it,
granted.
right? And so, again, talking around the community, there's actually one community, Bowen Island, Bowen Island transportation user who worked with TransLink, and he's already helping us in that front. We just want to make sure that we have all of our ducks ready in case they ask us, are you working with the community, right? So that's kind of the plan.
And, yeah, we did give a letter of support for
Yeah.
the service the last time. And the other question, I guess, is, I don't think there's any room in the public works yard, so where else do you want to park?
I have no idea, that's a question for you. Where could we plan to get some, right? Because this is so beneficial for the community, and none of us have, unfortunately, a big piece of property where we could park a bus, right? So it is a challenge right now.
Well, maybe we'll find somewhere. Maureen?
I'm wondering if this could be shaped up as a collaborative project, because it is in part a request to use municipal infrastructure, parking.
Yeah, certainly. Something to definitely look into. You got a long way to go on this, obviously, and I think negotiations with TransLink and that sort of thing are going to be paramount. But we're obviously going to do everything we can to make this successful. We have to continue that service on the mainland. It's essential to the commuters. And also on the island. There's a lot of parts on this island that aren't being serviced properly. It gets people out of their cars and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So there will definitely be support.
Yeah.
If
thanks a lot for the presentation, and I've been super impressed with what you guys are doing, because we've sort of went downhill on transportation the last couple of years, Cardigo, Jack Bell, the downtown, the Delta Water, so, and I know the Cardigo has had a huge effect on my time commuting, it's been a real drag. So, first off, commending to you guys doing this, and it's a tough one, as Peter will well tell you, it's not an easy one, and whatever, I'm definitely totally in support of doing whatever I can to do it, to make it happen.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Quick question, the membership and all that, are you still foreseeing people being able to go on one-off trips and that? And
Totally,
okay.
totally.
Just want to make sure.
The idea of a membership is to bring ownership of this society to the whole community and say, this is not the 5 of us who are building it. It's the 900 plus users or people who are interested, even those that do not use the bus. By us taking cars outside the ferry, we're actually helping the rest of the island, right, with the congestion, right? So this is an open, and the idea is that membership, again, our focus is not for profit, but we will need to raise that initial capital to be able to run this model.
And I think that's important, because if it's a closed membership, then it's harder to get
No.
municipality coming in with closed memberships.
Yeah, and it's a one-time, we're thinking our number crunching is telling us that we really will probably do a one-time membership sign up, and maybe if we get people just to, if they come to the island, well, you know what, there's this service, join in and become a member.
And just my last question, any connection into thought of connecting, so somebody can actually take a transfer bus for the end of their trip, or is that gonna be?
That's definitely in the docs. I know Peter has worked with, tried to do that, and that's probably gonna be in our plans. But what's holding us right now in executing a bunch of ideas is that we don't own the system right now, right? Once we own it, and that's probably, like I say, between 60 and 90 days, we'll be able to say, okay, now we own this service, which are the priorities? Where do we want to go first, second, third? But that's definitely on the dock.
Thanks.
And I probably should add that our membership, the ridership is highly motivated to make this work, to break even at least, if not more. And then they're highly skilled. So we've had a huge amount of individuals say, tell us when you're ready to go. And we have a whole range of skills on the bus that we can pull from, and people are actually biting at the bit, waiting to get involved. So we can do a lot of the work ourselves, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just delighted to hear your presentation and that you're doing all this good work. I'm just wanted to offer, some of the other islands in the Islands Trust have also got bus services up and running through nonprofit associations such as Gabriola. Also a 20-minute sailing from an urban center. Do you want to hear about these things? And if so, who should I email them to? Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right, thank you.
Please, totally. The more information, the more we learn, the better we'll become and be able to provide a better service.
Right. Okay, great, thank you.
Anybody else? Dave?
I'd like to make a recommendation. Could I do that?
Sure.
Okay, so I'd like to, unless anyone, any further questions?
Well, or is it better to bring it to the next council meeting?
I could bring it to the next council meeting, but I'm just sort of thinking of time being of the essence. It's a simple recommendation, is that we suggest that, recommend that Bowen Transportation Society works with BIMTAC to work with BIMTAC to pursue their objectives, because some of the questions, the asks for municipality, like, we can't do them right now, but if they're working with BIMTAC, then BIMTAC can make that recommendation to go to council. That's sort of what I would suggest. Is that appropriate, Kathy, or am I?
Yeah. I could say absolutely. Yeah, I think, like I say, obviously, you got a little ways to go here. I think I was going to say, come on back, keep us in the loop of what's going on. I think the next transition is going to be ownership for you. Then we can really start talking about it. But I think that resolution, I don't have a problem with that. Okay, well, we'll do a resolution. Let's get a resolution on the table first. But we're certainly, I can't speak for all the council, but I think you've got support. There's no question about that. And one form, everything we can do. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's see where this thing goes, but we're certainly happy and thank you for your
Yeah,
presentation.
no, and again, our objective was here really to present and introduce ourselves and let people know what we're working, and hopefully in 2 months or so, we can come with the next step and hopefully have the detailed plan to share with you guys.
Perfect, thank you. Resolution?
Yeah, so the council encourages Bowen Transportation Society in their work and asks them to work with BIMTAC to make recommendations to council as appropriate to assist in achieving their objectives.
All right. Any other discussion on that? I think it's sort of, it's pretty loose, but I think it's, it certainly gets you started with Intact. I think fantastic.
Really appreciate everyone's attention and thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on,
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
because we're gonna get a seconder and do the vote.
We got the second, ask a question, but all in favor?
The council
Perfect.
encourages.
We voted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your abstention counts as a council.
We're gonna skip down to new business. Helping pursue on fast. Protocol agreement.
Okay, this one, this is a verbal presentation, so I don't have slides. And I'm just going to hover here for a moment while the work is completed over there. Okay, so you've got a recommendation before you, and this was drafted by staff actually, and I'm bringing this forward because so many of us on council and some senior staff went to a invited presentation and conversation with the Squamish Nation back last month sometime. And so they this was an invitation from the Squamish Nation to elected officials in neighboring municipalities and local governments. Islands Trust was there as well, for example, and regional districts, elected officials and staff. So this was a chance for people like the people around this table to go and meet the Squamish Nation, get to know them a little better, and have conversations about how can we work together when we're First Nation who operates like this, with one planner, and these situations, and you're all these various elected groups. So riding on the ferry, about a week after that, Kathy was on the ferry. So we were talking about, this was a Friday, so this would have been on the weekend, or the next day, something like that. And so we talked a little bit about it, and who should also be on the ferry but Chris Corrigan, who had been the open space facilitator for that session, working for the Squamish Nation, and friend of some of the elected councillors. So I just thought it was a good time to have a quick chat. We did, and this is the result, the recommendation that's in front of you. This is bearing in mind that Bowen Council currently, we do not refer any rezonings, anything that we do out to Squamish First Nation or any other First Nation. So in this regard, I think we would like, some of us would like that to happen so that we can conduct reconciliation or get going on it, and also consult with our neighbors, referring our works to our local First Nations. I shouldn't say neighbors. We are together. So I think with that, I will see, does anybody have any questions?
Allison.
I certainly, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, I think we should be working with the Squamish Nation, but my experience has been you get to know somebody a little bit more before you all of a sudden sort of say, gosh, I want a protocol agreement or a memorandum of understanding. And the wording guide relationships and shared activities, what shared relationships, what shared activities. I know we're talking about naming trails, and to me, a good first step would be to perhaps invite them over, go to the beaches or some of the areas where we're wanting to name beaches and trails, and ask them about the history in those areas, have a dinner or a lunch with them and just talk about that kind of thing and get to know the council first, rather than sort of jumping in and going and saying, we want to negotiate an agreement, and they say, well, an agreement to do what and about what. I think we should have a developed relationship first. And I think that follows with the process in the Islands Trust memorandum that was done, that's on their website about developing good relations with the First Nations.
I hear you, and I think that would happen through the process of this is only to express an interest in developing a memorandum of understanding and a protocol agreement, and it came through some consultation on Chris Corrigan's part with his contacts within Squamish Nation's elected leadership, and I think we could do various things. We could be working, shared activities with the Squamish Nation might be referrals, for example, of our rezonings. Did they have any comment? We refer them some of our things to other parties. Why not the original First Nation? And also acknowledgements, if we wanted to have an acknowledgement before meetings of whose territory we're on, and that we're thankful to be here, naming some places, yes. And all of those things I think could happen through inviting them here or meeting them somewhere, conversation, light agenda, light meal, something like that, to get to know each other. I see this as a first step towards getting to know each other and to reciprocating their invitation. We took up, a bunch of us were there.
Yeah, second, David. I hear what you're saying. I agree. We have to cement those relationships with them. I think it's way too early to start talking about protocol agreements and that sort of thing. But what I would like to do, because this topic, there's some other issues involved here, and I'd like to leave it for the closed meeting at the end of this one. And not have a resolution now, but that's, if you want to push for a resolution, that's fine. David, you have some?
I think Rob was first.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know what the Squamish Nation has come to us with, like for rezoning and whatnot. Is that something they want to be involved with? Do they have the capacity to look at that? I guess for me, it's just, I'd like to know a bit more sort of what their asks are versus we want to have a relationship with them. What are they looking for from us, or what are they suggesting that we have as a relationship there as well? So I'm definitely exploring this, whether we go and send people and have a formal memorandum written up and all that. I don't know where those steps lie within that.
This wording, the Memorandum of Understanding and Protocol Agreement, comes via Chris Corrigan recommending to us some potential wording. We can certainly change it if that's what is the will of council. It's just that this is apparently their standard way of entering things like these kinds of relationships, and so working on that assumption, that's why it's in the language in front of you.
Maureen.
I also had some of the same reservations as have already been expressed, and also feel the need to say, I really hope this isn't misinterpreted. I had the same questions regarding what shared activities were we referring to. I wasn't quite sure if we could task a private citizen, even if he was interested in doing this work. And it really did feel premature. It was like pushing when I wasn't sure about all of the background as well. For example, do the other North Shore municipalities have memoranda of understanding and a protocol agreement? Not that they necessarily would need to have them, or that we could. Kathy, did you want to respond?
Yeah, the wording itself actually came from the Squamish Nation through Chris Corrigan. He was in contact with Kisellan. I think it's the city or district in North Vancouver is currently developing a protocol agreement. I think perhaps maybe what it is we change the recommendation that the council invite the Squamish Nation to a future meeting to discuss future memorandum of understanding and protocol agreement, and then the rest can remain the same.
I'd be more comfortable with that because it's
A
starting
workshop
the
or
meeting.
something like that.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with that too. Similar, I'd like to know more, but one other issue is we're also in the traditional territory of the Tsleil-Waututh
That's
First
correct.
Nation, so I'm not quite sure how to handle that as well. Pardon? No, we are.
Yeah, we are.
I've talked to
Must
them.
we?
I've met with the Tsleil-Waututh.
So I mean, these are all
Yeah, that's
considerations that we have
interesting,
to
the maps on the,
take very seriously.
on their websites don't show that.
Yeah, we're in overlapping territories of several
Yeah.
First Nations.
Yeah.
It's just that because the Squamish First Nation had invited
Sure.
us as part of the elected officials and the staff of this municipality. And I'm quite happy to, to adjust the recommendation so that everybody's comfortable with it. This is not any kind of, I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable. I don't think anybody does. So I'm quite happy to leave it as, could you just let me finish? I'd be quite happy to say something like that council contact the Squamish Nation to invite them to a meeting to talk about potential relationships and shared activities. Something like that.
Yeah,
I'd
That's-
second that.
Yeah.
sure, absolutely. No problem with that.
And then that Mayor Ander and Councillor
Yeah,
Fast,
seconded it.
we can, sure.
Kathy had a suggestion just to change a portion of the first sentence to read that council invite the Squamish Nation to a future meeting to discuss
No,
developing
I
a.
wanted to know if you got what Sue Ellen had, because Maureen and I were happy with that one.
It was
I didn't capture it now.
that council contact the Squamish Nation to invite them to a meeting to talk about relationships and shared activities.
And add between the Squamish Nation and Bowen Island municipality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Okay.
Do we say Squamish Nation Council and Bowen Island Municipality?
Squamish Nation.
Any further discussion? Did we get a second on that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Call the question. All.
That whole read it back again?
That council contact the Squamish Nation to invite them to a meeting to discuss or to talk about relationships and shared activities between the Squamish Nation and Bowen Island municipality.
Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Shauna Jennings. Manager of Rec and Community Services, Public Spaces Lead.
Hello. I'm here tonight to bring forward a public spaces naming and donor recognition policy. The purpose of the policy is twofold. One is to establish guidelines and criteria for naming municipally owned public spaces related to recreation, parks, trails, community amenities, and equipment. And the second part of the policy outlines a framework for donor recognition and possible naming opportunities. The municipality has been entering into collaborative project service agreements and with community groups, which has resulted in public assets for the community. And during the process of developing these initiatives, as well as fundraising around these initiatives, naming of the amenities and donor recognition opportunities have been identified. This policy has been developed to address some of these opportunities in terms of naming and donor recognition. The policy, in terms of financial implications, the policy states that donations must not create ongoing financial obligations to BIM and must include fundraising for ongoing maintenance as part of the donation. As well, donor recognition installations at the facilities or the amenities or the public space would be included in the overall project budget. Communications around the possible naming opportunities would be made known to the local First Nations community, and that would be happening through the project communication. Public feedback on proposed names would be sought also where appropriate, and again from the First Nations neighborhood residents. So if it was a neighborhood parklet or a park that was being named, that would be something the local neighborhood residents would be able to give feedback on, as well as the community groups or the groups that are working with the municipality on the collaborative project. The policy just will provide BIM for guidelines for naming the municipally owned spaces and ensure that stakeholders have been engaged, and will enable BIM to recognize contributions of donors also where applicable. The policy that you had in your agenda was developed by recreation staff and park staff. It's been reviewed by the Parks and Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, and on February 27th, the Recreation and Community Services Commission passed a recommendation recommending that council adopt the policy. And I'll open it up for any questions there.
So,
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Shauna. I wondered, on reading this the second time, I thought, oh, what about the library and the Arts Council? Does this apply to them? Because we, as being part of the library board, they have named the part that is, the part of the addition that is together the full commons as the Annie Laurie Wood annex, and for example, and that is to recognize the first librarian, whatever, and so I have a little bit of information about that if needed, but my question is, would this apply to the library, which has its own board, and you know, they're under the Library Act, and the Arts Council too? Because I see that it's related to recreation, parks, trails, and community amenities or equipment, and I'm wondering about the library, the Arts Council, and the community center. Would these all be subject to this policy?
Well, just to address the community center first, there is a naming opportunity and donor recognition policy specific to the community center that was developed as part of the fundraising campaign.
And we approved that at council, didn't we?
Yeah, that was approved at council, yes. And in terms of BYLAWS and the library, I think that would need to be still some conversation around that. I don't know.
It is a municipal library, so it would fall underneath our policy.
Okay.
BYLAWS, no.
Thank you.
Well, okay, and then a couple of other questions. Maybe we could make it clear in this policy then that it doesn't apply to BYLAWS and to the community center, but anyway. Are things that, well, one other thing I would like to say is that I'm hoping there could be some public spaces that might not have benches in them with people's names on them. In a similar way to having natural spaces where you don't encounter any signs or you don't see things that interrupt people's connection with nature. And is there anything in the policy that says that there shall be places that will not have naming?
I guess it doesn't specifically say that in the policy, however, under 12.12D, it does say BIM will have final decision on signage, physical display, and location, accompanying naming opportunities. I'm not sure if that addresses.
Would those come to council, or would those be from staff and
they would be
the referrals?
Through staff, and council
the
would have the
advisory?
final.
Council would get the final say? Yes. Okay. Thank you, that's good enough.
Shauna, just two quick questions. One is, we're not talking corporate names right now, we're talking individuals, people's names, not gonna be like the Toyota Trail.
I don't think it's gonna be the Toyota Trail. I guess.
It does say businesses.
It could be a business, and just to clarify that part of this came up through the disc golf course, where island businesses may be naming a hole, sponsoring a hole, and have purchased the basket, and they may be wanting to name the hole.
Okay.
So in that instance, it could be.
And are we talking local businesses now, or could it be non-local businesses?
Well, that would still come back to council
It
to,
will always come back to council for the name, so we always
yes,
have.
to,
okay.
for final approval.
I think there was a point here about those being honored, will be involved in the naming process, or the next of kin will be. I'm just thinking if we're wanting to honor somebody from 120 years ago or something like that, is that gonna make that a problem, or can we get around that if we needed to? I'm wondering if that needs to be in there, or if that wording just needs to be cleared up a bit.
Okay,
It's just a policy, so council gives a guideline, not a,
Okay.
and I think the honoring idea is somebody's going to honor their deceased relative with a bench or something, so, or a park or something, so that's more.
It sounds like we're gonna have
Thinking on.
discretion on this, and
Yeah.
this is more on, that's fine, thanks.
okay.
I like the report, Gary, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Second.
I do have a comment.
Okay, Maureen, go ahead.
Just under item 4, I wonder, which deals with the referral to committees, I wonder if there might be any value in also referring to the Community Economic Development Committee. They may actually have some useful input.
Okay,
Yeah.
can add that in.
Thank you. And then just in item 6, just there's a little typo that I'll send to you.
Oh, okay.
What, I missed something?
Sure, I was just
All right, anybody, any other comments? All right, last question, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna.
Well done.
Staff reports. Emma.
I would have thought it was huge.
Yeah, it's an odd word.
I'll take the word.
Referral, yeah, sort of.
Good evening. I think the first staff report is for development variance permit DBP 05 2018. I do not have a presentation for this. It is coming to council for consideration. This is the application for 510 Smugglers Road, and council had a site visit just last week. And photographs were requested to show similar tramways from the water, and also the types of colors that were available to the tram cars can be painted in. The applicant did send along some of those pictures, and I believe they're part of the agenda package. But the request remains the same, reduction of the sea setback from 30 meters to 7.3, and a reduction of the side setback from 7.5 meters to 0.15 to facilitate the construction of a tramway from the house to the water. And the reasons for that is it's very steep terrain going down to the water, as council saw on the site visit. Yeah, there's no other real viable alternative siting for the tramway. So staff recommends that council approve this development variance permit.
All right, thank you, Emma. Sue?
If you want to start with me again, sorry. I'm going to be speaking against this proposal for a development variance permit, mostly because I value the look of the water, of the shoreline from the water, and I think our shorelines should remain in a fairly natural condition. To me, it looks like another dock, and when you look at the photos that are in our report, you might see what I mean. It looks like a longer dock that sticks up from the water's edge to the top of these other examples that are given here. I understood from our site visit that the trackway itself is that silvery color, like docks are of the aluminum, composite aluminum, and so they do look like more structures on foreshore. I remember when the land use bylaw was established, and that at that time a 30-meter setback from the sea for structures was put in place. That was for boathouses and all the other kinds of things that people install along the shoreline, and in order to keep the shoreline more natural for the scenic benefit of everybody, and for the, you know, the unique attributes of an ocean, of an island in an ocean. That's why that 30-meter setback was established. I worry about the precedents we would set by permitting this variance. Already there's lots of pressure to put structures into the 30-meter setback from the ocean, into the coastal shoreline area. And, you know, I sympathize with the landowners, but they did purchase a property on a very steep cliff. We have many steep cliffs on Bowen, and not all of them have access to the water, but the road is right there at the top, and then they do have an existing stairway that could be repaired, and as many people do. And I think I've got most of the reasons there, but mostly I just think we've got a 30-meter setback all around the island, and I think the same rules should apply to everybody. And that's our bylaw. And so I would like to say that I won't be voting in favor of this motion.
All right, Rob?
Yeah, I think I've given this one quite a bit of thought, and I actually kayak right by that place probably once every 2 weeks. So, and I do very much appreciate sort of the natural shoreline. And thanks, Emma, for sending those pictures. It was good to see in context with some other, and some looked okay, some were that. And I've been to the site as well, and I think I was the only one that wound up going right down to the bottom. It is one steep area. You know, the 30-meter setback is one of the things that sort of concerns me, where, I mean, they're asking to go right, like, very far into that, which was a bit of a concern for me. I sort of wonder, if we have this, what would we not allow to have happen? Because this is definitely one big structure that's going to be built down there. And I think we do have a reason for that. I also wonder, you know, 15 centimeters from the neighbor's property line, I wonder what the next neighbors down the road are going to think about that. I know these neighbors apparently had no issue with it, but I'm thinking long-term as well. I am curious to know what would happen if one of these trams gets stuck halfway up, like how our fire and rescue services would deal with that, and if that is something that's been taken into consideration. One of the things I do like about staircases from a safety perspective along those cliffs is you can actually go up them if you're a kayaker stranded, so I appreciate that. This unfortunately doesn't offer that anymore, so the community benefit to potentially having a safe route out, I don't see with this as well. Like I said, I thought about this quite a bit, and I'm gonna, I think, very similar to Councillor Fast. I don't think I'm going to support this one just because of those various issues. But a question for Emma on the fire and rescue side of things. Has that been taken into consideration? What would happen if somebody did get stuck halfway up on those? If we have the capabilities to deal with that?
I'm not sure operationally how it works, but the design of the tramway has a set of stairs that parallel the tramway track.
There is an actual staircase,
Yes.
staircase that goes up. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Michael?
You know, we all went to see this, and actually I do support it. I think it's extremely discreet. The natural topography basically hides as it goes down right in between a ravine. I think actually, given the care and the obvious, frankly, this is a very expensive piece of equipment, and it does have a staircase going down as well. It is virtually invisible from the land sides, has the agreement with the neighbours. Probably one of the reasons that the neighbours agreed that if they wanted to bring something of consequence up from the shoreline, it would also be helpful to lift something heavily up, because those staircases, I would regard those staircases as infinitely more dangerous than any form of tramway. So, you know, these people have come forward to us with this very discreet request, and I think it opens up the beach for them, and their neighbours support it. I think it is so hidden. It certainly is not an eyesore, and I would certainly, given the time and the care and the obvious expense involved in using first-class equipment, I would support it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Same reasons, supporting.
Okay, I guess I'll speak. I'm sympathetic to what Robin and Sue Ellen said. I care about that 30-meter setback, but of course they're already down there with the stairs, as are the neighbors way down there. But I tend to agree with Councillor Kale. I think it's really quite hidden, and I appreciate the opportunity this provides for the homeowner to get down to the water, so I would support it.
I also support it.
Yeah, thank you. I support it in general. Obviously, I'd like to see it a color that would blend in with the environs, and I think we could put that definitely into the.
I think some of those samples as well.
Yeah.
Looking at the pictures.
Not the
Yeah.
tram. Emma, would the tramway be painted? What I understood from the walkabout, from the site visit, from the contractor, the installer, is that the tramways remain that silver composite material, and the
rails.
car, the rails remain, that silvery dock-like structure, while the stairs and the box, the carrying funicular itself, can be painted. The stairs remain silver, is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. The track of the tramway is the bare aluminum, which does get a matte sheen with oxidation, and then the tram box itself and the stairs can be powder coated.
Right. I'm looking at the photos there.
Yeah, and they're probably too. That's the other thing. The superstructure will also all be painted. The 30-meter setback from the ocean, yes, we have that. There's already a small village down there, so I don't see that that's a huge addition to that. My bigger concern, rather than the panorama from the boats and the ferries, is the neighbors' concern, and they don't have concern with it at all. And I'm sure that they, like Michael said, they'd probably be able to use it.
Have we heard from both sets of neighbors? Excuse me.
No, I've only seen the one letter from one neighbor.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else came in.
Okay.
Oh, we got one on the other side. Yeah, I think both sides.
No, there's only been one written submission support.
But I gather from what we've heard that the other neighbors not against it.
Yeah, the immediate neighbor was fine, and then I don't want to mention names, but the others, one to the west.
To the west.
Said it's okay.
So
Yes.
That was the
support.
letter that we have here.
Yeah.
The letter, yeah, and so where did we get the other information from?
I was told that at the meeting.
Yeah, but that's just,
So all the immediate neighbors were notified as part of the application process, so they did have an opportunity to submit correspondence if they wish.
so we've only formally heard from one. Okay, and the other, I just wanted to add one more thing,
Yes.
if I may. Thank you,
Yeah, certainly.
Mr. Mayor. I was looking in our island plan, looking at all the things I signed up to do, and one of them is the business of what we call phase 2 of the docks bylaw, which also could be, shoot, I've lost it here. Oh yeah, here it is. Continue working on drafting a bylaw that specifies where docks are not permitted, with the idea of keeping some parts of the island with a natural shoreline. And it seems to me that permitting a variance like this before we've done that work is the wrong way around. And that by looking at the photos here of those pre-existing tramways, that they look like extensions of a dock up the slope. And I wonder whether that would be taken into consideration of which parts of the shoreline should remain in the natural state. Would we not allow docks and we still allow these tramways like we're going to do in this situation, which seems to me another reason not to
allow this development variance permit.
Okay, point taken. I think you're misreading that shoreline thing. I think it's whether it's a beach or that sort of thing. That's what we have to determine on it's on a steep cliff like that. I don't think that's an issue there. Anyway, I will read the council issued development variance permit DVP 05-2018 for the variance of side and sea setbacks for 510 Smugglers Cove Road, legally described as SL 13 VAS 2806 DL 1605 PID 017784 182. Second, Michael. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 2 in opposition. Thank you. And it passes. Okay, Emma, for 8.2, development variance permit.
Not to be confused with the one we just discussed, but this is another development variance permit on 288 Smugglers Cove Road, and it does not involve any tramways. The location is just east of the previous one we were talking about, actually just west of Hood Point here. And this property, oh, it's very hard to see, but this property has an existing house and deck right against the shoreline. I think the graphic didn't say very well, low resolution. But the shoreline is an irregular shoreline, and there should be a picture of this in the staff report. As with most of the properties in this area, there is a steep slope going to the water. So this house sits quite near this steep slope. The current owners want to keep this existing house and are undertaking extensive renovations. These renovations involve quite a bit of deck extension, both to the west and the east. The small portion to the west that they are proposing to add is to allow access to and from the deck and the kitchen. The kitchen is what we're looking at right here from this picture, taken from this side of the house looking in. It's a fairly small constrained space, as you can see, with a grade change in the inside the house. It is constrained to this level. This picture is of this wall right here in the kitchen, and it looks out towards the deck. The current deck, which is not there, they're replacing it right now. It goes to about halfway point on this wall. The proposed deck extension will bring the deck in line with the wall of the kitchen here and allow a doorway to be put into this wall that goes onto the deck. This is just another picture taken from the side of the house here, just off the kitchen, so you can see how steep this slope is to the water. And this is essentially where the proposed deck would end, where the ladder is. So the application is requesting a reduction in the sea setback, which is 7.5 meters for this zone, requesting a reduction to 4.5 meters to enable this deck extension. The application has also submitted a geotechnical and environmental review, both of which support the proposed development. The environmental review did have several recommended mitigation measures, which are included in the draft development variance permit. And given the relatively minor variance that's requested, and that the proposed deck will still sit further from the sea than the existing house, and it is supported by the technical reports, staff is recommending that council approve public notice for consideration of this application at the May 13th meeting.
Would we be organizing a site visit?
I think we committed to doing that for every DVP.
It's not conforming now, right?
Right.
It's grandfathered.
Yeah, I mean, it's not legal non-conforming.
Maureen, question? Is construction already underway,
The renovations are underway.
but not the construction of the deck?
It's not the extension of the deck that requires a variance.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Or so, yeah, they received a building permit for the deck, and if you want to go back just to the.
Yeah.
So the, that end of the deck received
Oh,
a
okay.
building permit recently outside of the setback.
Okay.
So the variance is just for this portion.
The little part.
Right, okay.
And do you have that picture with,
Yeah.
one looking out to sea there with the steep? Yeah, that one where the ladder is. So what's that ladder sitting on now?
Ground?
On the top of the ladder?
It's a support beam that runs across the deck,
The front of the
the
deck.
front of the deck, yeah.
That's always been there or the new one? Because if it's always been there, then
Yeah.
it's,
Then it's
or,
over.
well,
Well, there is a little bit of a gap.
I can't actually tell.
I think a site visit would.
Size
Yeah.
of it, yeah. People-
Yeah, I was interested in the same picture, looking at that beam. I mean, if the beam's already there,
and there was
nothing's happening, except for just got
those are woody dogs.
And we're really talking in truth about a really quite small space.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I mean, it seems a very natural thing to do if it was on hill. If they'd taken the time for the studies and the rest. Personally, I don't need to go and see that amount of room to put a couple of trays on. I'll fine. But however.
I mean, is that location very private? I mean, is this gonna be in anybody's view corridor or anything like that?
It's in the middle of the trees when you look at it.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, yeah.
So there, from what I recall, the other house is sited over here, and there is another house here. But there is an existing deck already. I mean, I don't know
Okay.
if it's going to be impacting views, if that's the concern.
No, that's fine. Rob?
Yeah, I'm just also thinking council and staff time, and I'm, along with Councilor Kayla, I'm fine to wait this without a site visit, so unless that's really something that needs to be done.
I would like to know if there are any big trees in that area that would be cut in order to construct that new part of the deck. Do you know?
No.
So will the rock, I think.
Do you mean, no, there are none, or you don't know?
No, there will be no clearing.
Thank you.
So,
And,
sorry, yes.
The deck extension is quite small. It's less than a meter.
Yeah,
4 feet wide, David.
So the environmental mitigation around is really about construction debris and things of that sort that are in. So, yeah,
So nothing ends up in the.
and nothing ends up in the drain, right? So I'm happy with that. I agree with Rob. We don't need to go through. I don't think we need to go through.
Stand on the table, somebody read the recommendation.
I'll move that notice be given to council will be considering the issuance of development variance permit DB 02/2019 for the variance of setback to the sea for 288 Saunders Cove Road, legally described as lot 2, plan 10-120, block 13, DL 823, PID 009504117, at the May 15, 2019 meeting of council. That council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of development variance permit DBP 02/2019 in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to all properties within 100 meters of the legal boundary of 288 Smugglers Cove Road, legally described as.
Second that. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
The rule is standard.
Notice we give it.
Yeah.
The notice.
The rule is standard practice offer a site visit. Doesn't matter. Take us up on it.
Got the offer. Daniel Martin, chance. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. So we received recently a number of referrals for 4 docks in the Cape Project Curtis area. And so I've prepared a presentation that has a few slides of this general overview, and it goes through each one of the 10-year applications individually. So if it's okay with Mayor and Council, I'll proceed through all 4, and then for this general discussion. But so for those not familiar, Cape Project Curtis on the corner of Bowen, so it has a number of waterfront lots, 4 of which, so these are the 4 that are the subject of the referrals. So lot 6, lot 11, lot 13, and lot 15. They also have associated 10-year numbers and civic addresses, but I tend to find it easiest to remember the lot numbers. But we'll go through. So in some background, so in 2013, the province granted 5-year leases for 4 docks in Cape Project Curtis. There is a 5th dock currently under construction that is not a subject of this renewal, and we haven't received that renewal. So since the docks, since that 2013 date, Council's made a number of changes to the land use bylaw. So in 2013, Council adopted an amended bylaw to establish parameters for private and group mooring facilities, including things like setbacks from property line projections, maximum float area, maximum width, maximum length, eliminated other uses like floating breakwaters and boathouses. In May 2015, Council adopted a bylaw which prohibited community docks, group, private, and permanent moorage facilities in Cape Project Curtis. And in 2018, Council adopted Bylaw 445, which specified that prohibition, so it added greater clarity to that, to also specifically exclude boat lifts. And then in October 2018, Council adopted a bylaw which amended the zone again, the water general zone across the whole island, to restrict docks from not physically dividing the beach or impede pedestrian access, or to negatively impact bluegrass meadows, beds, or patches, where previously it said just bluegrass meadows. So the sum total of all those amendments, what they did is they placed these structures in something that's called a non-conforming use, governed by the Local Government Act. So it says that if at the time the land use regulation is adopted, a building or structure to which it is lawfully used and does not conform to the bylaw, does not conform to the bylaw, it may be continued as a non-conforming use. So that's laid out in the Local Government Act, it may be continued. The next section says it's discontinued. If it's discontinued for a continuous period of 6 months, any subsequent use of the land, building, or other structure becomes subject to the land use regulations. So that's when somebody loses their non-conforming use provision. It says if it's used for a seasonal purpose, it's not discontinued as a result of normal seasonal practices. And then section 531 says about what you can do with a non-conforming building that's subject to a non-conforming use. It says it's prohibited from having a structural alteration or addition. So that's some of the background legal stuff that we're into. So the first application is for lot 13. So similar to all of them, this is a 10-year replacement application. So they were under a 5-year lease, and the province is proposing to replace that with a specific permission. There's no physical changes proposed to the dock structure itself as part of the application.
But I just asked a question to the saw the word go back to slide. Specific permission, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that's what the province, over the since I've been here, they've gone through a period of replacing lease documents with what they call specific permission. So they have no set timeline. They're given non-exclusive use, and they call it a specific permission as their 10-year document, and they say essentially it continues until the province cancels it.
So it's like permanent?
Yeah.
So it sort of means like this is like permanent then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes and no.
Okay.
The province redid everything early in January. Permissions typically do not have a fixed term or expiry date. They are granted for as long as the dock owner requires, and until such time as the authorizing agency terminates or withdraws the permission. So, and the minister or delegate can withdraw permission at any time without restriction.
To be clear, the authorizing agent is the province.
Yeah. And the other thing is, specific permissions and general permissions were created in their process about 2 or 3 years ago, or it's less than a year ago, where there's a whole bunch of areas where you can just build a dock and you don't have to go and get a water lot license or get any permission. But there's a whole bunch of other areas where you have to get specific permission. And the whole of Vancouver Island and the South Coast and everything is in the specific permission area.
Daniel, just when
Yeah.
you're going
Yeah.
through these lots, can you let us know if there's like a physical, people living on the property, or if it's an empty lot, just so we know moving through all these lots? Or is there nobody living on any of these right now?
As far as I'm aware, there's nobody living on,
So they're just
How
dogs?
many have houses?
I don't believe any of them have houses.
Oh.
Any of these 4 specific ones.
So that big one that's being built right out by the lighthouse?
The big one, the one that's under construction, that's not a part of this renewal, has a house under construction and the dock is under construction, on lot 13. No,
That's not one that we're dealing with tonight.
No,
it's not one that we're dealing with.
That's lot 15.
Lot 15,
just as that one.
14. 14.
Okay, let's let
All right.
Dave finish.
So we have here, this isn't a report, and this isn't usually readable, I apologize, but these are the plans that were submitted with the dock application, and then this is the current dock as we saw it in March of this year. The construction in the background is for the other dock that's currently under construction. And so this is the same recommendation that's in your application, but essentially what we're recommending is whereas the use is an existing non-conforming use and no changes are proposed, that council has no objection to the 10-year renewal. And so that's similar to other ones that we've done, including the other one that's on the agenda tonight, where when the 10-year has changed, so the form of ownership has changed of the structure, but the structure itself is not changing, that we recommend we have no objection to that. We have noted, so I've noted in here, so there's a condition of the lease that noted in the lease that as part of the agreement that they make diligent use of the land. And I asked in communication with the province, what does that mean? When would you let them know? Because it says something like if there's not been diligent use, the province would inform the owners. The owners have 60 days to remedy it and then to continue. And so I asked them, well, what would trigger you notifying that or notifying the owners or sort of taking action or doing something? And they said, well, nobody's ever complained about it. We don't have anything on record. Nobody's ever said that it's not being diligently used. So that was my recommendation, is to just provide the comment to them that we are aware of the use, and we have heard concerns, as we've heard tonight in the letters, that the people are concerned that they're not being used. So continuing on lot 15, so this is on the south side of the Lighthouse Lane. And so again, same things apply as the 10-year replacement to replace a 5-year lease with a specific permission. There again is no physical changes proposed to the dock. Again, this is not very readable, but again, the dock, based on our site visit, was essentially what was in the application package, what was in the original, and then the 10-year replacement. And you can see it here, so this is from our site visit. So the recommendation again is the same. CLR 04 is on lot 11. This again is an application for 10-year replacement. There's no physical changes proposed to the dock. We did note in our visit of this one that the dock, as shown in the documents they submitted, was with a sliding access to the shoreline, and instead of as constructed with a staircase that comes down and stops just shy of the high water mark. So in this one, our recommendation is to express concern that it's built at variance with the drawings submitted. And I raised
Go
this.
back to that, yeah, stay on that one, please.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Oh, sorry, on this.
Yeah.
And then, so the final one is on lot 6, and this is actually the wrong orthophoto, it's right on the next page. But so again, the application is the same. It's a 10-year replacement of a 5-year provincial lease to be replaced with a specific permission. No physical changes proposed to the dock. This is the correct orthophoto here showing it. So this one we did note when we went out that it's actually built quite differently than the 10-year application documents, which show it in a straight line continuing out. So if you see on the orthophoto is picking up that first gangway piece, but the second piece is actually then built at an angle that kind of goes this way. This orthophoto was taken in 2016, just showing the first gangway, not the second gangway piece. And it shows again a straight line with a straight staircase connecting the two. And this is a little hard to see, but you can see this gangway continue this line with this one coming out at an angle, and then a spiral staircase connecting the two. So after our site visit, I flagged this for the province again, that this was not built significantly different. And their response essentially, it looked like it was still built within the 10-year area, and so they weren't concerned with the change, but we're asked them for accurate as-built drawings. And so again, with this one, we would make the same recommendation that we expressed concern to the province, that they were built at variance to the drawings that were submitted. But I'll note with all of these, construction was commenced prior to our adopting a bylaw that would require building permit applications for docks. So that was done in that, as part of that 2013 amendment, so we require building permits. So none of these require building permits to be built. That's the end of my run through.
All right. Questions? Maureen?
Well, I'll cut to the chase. I mean, my bottom line is that I do object to the application for the private mortgage facility in every instance. And I would not be able to support the recommendation as put forward. Even within the recommendation, where it says we have no objection, we go on to express concerns or worries, or it does not make sense to me to say we don't object when something was built at variance, where it is, where the docks are demonstrably not being used, and where there is significant continuing public opposition to those docks in that location. So in terms of providing feedback to FLINRO, they can specify, I assume they have, they've asked us to specify whether we object or we don't object. Are those the options?
So with this, we didn't receive this through the formal referral mechanism, and I can't always tell when they use this system and when they don't, but in that system they ask for to tick interests unaffected, no objection to the approval of the project, no objection to approval of project subject to conditions outlined below, or recommend refusal of the project due to reasons outlined below.
Okay, then I'd be quite comfortable with recommend refusal due to the reasons below.
I'll second it.
I think we're still
Don't have
discussing.
David?
Well, I was also concerned, a similar comment to Maureen's, is that I just find it very strange that we're telling the province that they can check to see if these are being used, when we're the ones who are there able to say they're not being used. I mean,
Okay, can we get clarification? Daniel, who controls these docks now? Do we, or does the province?
What do you mean by control?
I think more jurisdiction.
Who has the jurisdiction over it?
So the land is owned by the province, and the province has a lease with the adjacent upland owners for the dock, and they're looking to replace that. So like it's within our municipality, we have jurisdiction and we have zoning control over it. The province is the owner of the land and has the 10-year agreement with the upland owner.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in our zoning bylaw about use, other than we talk about the docks and how big they can be, how long they can be, how wide they can be, and all that sort of stuff. But there's nothing that says you must use them 10 days a year, 20 days a year, 500 days a year.
So that is up to the province to monitor.
Well, I guess what is diligent use means.
Well, I don't know.
It's their turn.
Rob?
Just a question with Daniel. So, because I wasn't here when this whole dog thing, which is probably a good thing.
Count yourself lucky.
Yeah, I know. So, after on your background sheet, you had a bunch of sort of regulations that we put forward that now make these docks non-conforming. So if somebody wanted to build something to that scale now and be like, sorry, it's not going to happen.
I mean, so the one, basically the long ones, no, would not be allowed anywhere on Bowen, is the short answer. And that one, like, I think this one on lot 15 would fit, except that it's not allowed specifically within the Cape Project Curtis area, so it's not as long as some of the other docks. So some of them are long enough or large enough that they're not permitted anywhere on Bowen anymore. Whereas I think the one on lot 15 is short enough that it would be permitted, except that we don't permit them in any of the lots on Cape Project Curtis.
Okay, thanks.
What was the refusal option again?
Recommend refusal of project due to reasons outlined below.
I guess I have another question then. So what would then happen?
If they're refused.
If we recommend refusal,
Or if we say, I guess, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's up to the province to make a decision. If the province did not renew the leases, I think it would be up to them. I think there's provisions in the lease.
Well, I'd be much more comfortable with our rejecting and leaving it in the province's hands, and for members of our public to be able to communicate with the province their views on this.
I can take the views of the province, of the public, if you care to look at the last time this was debated hotly, was extremely mixed. There were the people who were opposed, and there were many, well over 100, who wrote in support of the people here at Cape Rosa Curtis. So if anyone wants to pull those numbers, they're very welcome to. But please don't anyone think that it was just one group opposed and no one group in favour, because that's simply not the case. That there was a huge number of people who wrote in support of the Cape owners. So, you know, I'm sorry this has had to come in front of us before again, and I'm not sure it comes under our jurisdiction, and if people want to make a public statement, well, that's, I guess it's up to them. Frankly, I recognise that the last time this was hotly discussed, there were two sets of people, and some were for and some were against, and there were many on both sides. So honestly, we are not going to make a material difference to this, and that the whole one other camp doesn't have to be energised to write in support because another camp writes in opposition. I don't get it. I'm sorry. I think we're wasting everyone's time, and I'm in favour of letting the recommendations as written stand and be supported.
I'm going to speak against these motions in much the same way as Maureen has started to speak them, and I'd like to move. And I'm also going to say that there's 1,500 signatures on the petition, at least, against the previous docs, and together with the 100 supporters that you're referring to, if those numbers are correct. It's been a while. But I would like to move that Council recommend refusal of specific permissions for the reasons listed below. That Council expresses concern that the existing, I'm looking at the one on the last one, page 74, that Council expresses concern that the existing private moorage facility was built at variance to the drawing submitted with the original 10-year application, and the submitted drawings for a 10-year application renewal application, and that the private moorage facility at 1760 Collingwood Lane has little signs of regular use, period. And because citizens of Bowen Island have expressed their ongoing opposition to docks leading off from this conservation covenanted land.
I'd like to propose an amendment, just in addition, and that Council direct staff to forward all dock-related correspondence received from the public related to this application, to forward to FLINRA.
From when to when?
From when to when, over what period of time?
Related to this application.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment or second it, whatever's needed.
Are you only changing D resolution, or?
Thought we could do them one at a time.
So you started with the last one?
Yes.
And what exactly again did you want to change it? You're leaving the whereas the same?
No, I was leaving that.
She's proposing an alternative.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So-
Fast.
And it's been moved and seconded? Or just moved?
It's just been moved so far.
Right.
Did you second it?
I seconded,
Yeah, okay.
and then proposed an amendment, which was accepted.
So could I hear, well,
What, can we hear what Hope has written down?
I'm leaving the whereases right off.
There's a 1 second to copy and paste some things.
I'm just gonna comment on where I think it is. Like, I agree with the points that Sue Ellen raises where it's clearly, the 2 points, that it was not, it was built at variance and it's not being used, whatever terms you use for that. It's not in our business to say the public thinks this, the public thinks that. We don't know, because as Michael said, like maybe there's 1,500 versus, I don't know what they are. But I think it's fair enough that we can forward all correspondence, such as Maureen suggests. But I don't want to get into, like
I'm
Rob-
happy to withdraw that little piece because Maureen fits it. That's okay. I'll take that part out. About
I think that
citizens
should-
have expressed.
Yeah.
You can take that bit right out. I'm happy with that as a friendly amendment.
So where does it stand?
Yeah, so where does it stand then, please?
Hope is figuring it out.
Sorry, lots of words
Yeah.
here. Okay, I think I got most of it, except for just the last sentence of your original. So let me just read it and you can fill in the blank. That council recommend refusal of specific permissions for the reasons listed below. The use is an existing non-conforming use. Oh, no, sorry. My screen is a little bit, everything's moving around. I'm gonna have to work on this, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's a little bit more difficult than I anticipated.
That the existing private mortgage facility was built at variance too, and that first bit.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, that concern that the existing private mortgage facility was built at variance to the drawings submitted with the original 10-year application and the submitted drawings for a 10-year renewal application, and the private mortgage facility at 1760 Collingwood Lane has little sign of regular use, and that council directs staff to forward all doc-related correspondence, all correspondence related to this application to Bylaw.
Can you read the very first one again, please? The council has.
The council recommend refusal of specific permissions for the reasons listed below.
Refuse permission?
And then the two.
Recommend refusal of the specific permission for reasons listed below.
Hope, I think you need to put in, because we're dealing with each one on its own, so relating to CLR 05.
I intended to, but for the purposes of this.
No, each of those issues that you brought up were asked of Daniel to Flimro, and they came in with responses. So, are we just reiterating that? Is that what you want to do?
In some respects, yes, but for me, the larger issue is that it's a clear statement from council that these are concerns to us, rather than saying that we have no objection, when even in the wording of the recommendations, it's clear we do have concerns and objections. It's about being honest with them. I mean, they will make decisions as to how they proceed with this information, but at least there's clarity, assuming this gets supported, at least there's clarity that we're still not that happy with how this has evolved.
That's right. I mean,
Okay, let's get through this and get her done.
Okay.
I'm not changing your motion, but I just Googled on the government website, diligent use in quotation marks. And they created it because, all the examples of diligent use, one has to do with ocean energy projects, another one has to do with run-of-the-river projects, one of them has to do with cannabis growing land on Crown land. It's all where people have gotten a lease for Crown land, and all they're wanting to do is ensure that you're using the Crown land for what you said you were going to do. So as far as I'm concerned, these people have demonstrated diligent use. They asked for a lease for a dock, to build a dock, and they built the dock. So they've got diligent use.
Thank you.
Okay, Hope, are we there yet? Sorry.
I I believe so.
Okay.
I'll read it in its entirety. That council will recommend refusal of the referral from MFLNROD relating to Crown Land Application File Number 2410703, located at 1760 Collingwood Lane, for the reasons listed below. Concerned that the existing private moorage facility was built at variance to the drawings submitted with the original 10-year application and the submitted drawings for a 10-year renewal application, and that the private moorage facility at 1760 Collingwood Lane has little sign of regular use, and that council directs staff to forward all correspondence related to this application to MFNLROD.
Wait, the one correction in my original motion was to, that council recommend refusal of this specific permission. What,
That's just the application file that's in the original.
but why I'm saying that is because possibly they will say, okay, well, we'll put in another 5-year temporary license or something less onerous. I just wanted to make it,
A specific permission is a type of license.
I'm aware of this. Anyway, can you tell me why you're not using the word specific permission? Recommend refusal of this, of a specific permission?
I'm
You
happy
said
to put that in. I was
refusal
just
of a
using
referral.
the wording that was in that relates to the file name for context. But I'm happy to use the word specific permission. I didn't take it out for any specific reason.
Okay, because it just says recommends refusal of the referral. Is that what you said?
Yes. The specific permission? Referral?
Yeah. Yes.
Of the referral for specific permission.
Yeah. Thank you, that clarifies it.
Can I ask about the correspondence? Is this correspondence to date, correspondence from a date, correspondence to a future date? Because probably lots of other people haven't had an opportunity but would like now, seeing this, to correspond.
I think it would be correspondence relating to this application in particular. So it's correspondence we've had to date, future correspondence we receive regarding this application, we've also forwarded to the province.
So now I've got to ask everybody who wrote in support before to write in support again.
Well,
Please.
okay, so we got a first and a second on that?
Excuse me, just in response to that, I don't think we have to ask people to do that. I think that the fact that council clearly communicates to the province what our position is would result in less need for people to write.
What about all the people that are in support?
We're dealing with
Okay,
whether
okay.
we object or whether we recommend refusal.
Yeah. Okay, it's first and second, and any more discussion on this particular part? No, thank you. I'll ask a question. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Thank you. 3 opposed. Okay.
I saw Councillor Kales and Councillor Morse's hand up.
And Councillor Marin.
Okay.
Okay, next one.
Okay, going backwards. The same thing, exactly, except for, because this one also has the expressed concern that the existing private moorage facility was built at variance. And the submitted drawings, yeah. So this would be the same thing, except for 1810 Roger Curtis Lane.
I'll second that.
Sort of ready, no?
Would you like me to read it?
You wouldn't mind?
The council recommend refusal of the referral for specific permission from MFLNROD relating to Crown Land Application File Number 2410700, located at 1810 Roger Curtis Lane, for the reasons listed below. Concerns that the existing private moorage private moorage facility was built at variance to the drawings submitted with the original 10-year application and the submitted drawings for 10-year renewal application, and that the private moorage facility at 1810 Roger Curtis Lane has little sign of regular use, and that council directs staff to forward all correspondence related to this application to MFLNROD.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. 3 in opposition.
And I'd like to propose, now looking up one more to B, this is 1850 Lighthouse Lane. The same except the bit about the drawings, expressing concern about the being at variance, the drawings submitted being at variance. So the second thing
So
in the
that
law.
has to come out.
Is this-
Okay. So that council recommend refusal of the referral for specific permission from MFLNROD relating to Crown Land application file number 2410701 located at 1830 Cape Drive for the reasons listed below. Reason.
Wait, 241?
Well, that's 701 is resolution A.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah.
2410702. Thank you. Located at 1850 Lighthouse Lane.
Correct.
Thank you. For the reason listed below, the private moorage facility at 1850 Lighthouse Lane has little sign of regular use, and that council directs staff to forward all correspondence related to this application to MFLNROD.
Yep.
So I move that.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 3 in opposition. Thank you.
And the same for A, as we just did. So without the piece about the built at variance to the drawings.
This is for 1830. Okay, the council recommend refusal of the referral for specific permission from MFLNROD relating to the Crown Land application file 2410701 located at 1830 Cape Drive for the reason listed below. The private moorage facility at 1830 Cape Drive has little sign of regular use, and that council directs staff to forward all correspondence related to this application to MFLNROD.
All right.
Second.
First and second. Further discussion? Okay. That's a question. All in favor? Opposed? 3 in opposition. All right. Brings that to a close. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Bylaw Ruggles. Step right up.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Mayor Council. Tonight, I'm here to present a noise exemption permit application submitted by the Bowen Island Lodge, located at 380 Cardena Drive in Snug Point. This application is for a wedding event to be held on Saturday, July 6th from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. The application identifies the expected type of indoor noise to be voices, amplified speeches and music, and voices outdoors. The reason I'm presenting this application to council is due to the staff recommendation for council to not approve the permit application. And the reasons staff has recommended the application to not be approved is based on, number one, the application not meeting specific criteria as outlined in the Bowen Island Lodge Operating Agreement, also known as their covenant. And 2, not meeting the minimum criteria that staff would use to approve a noise exemption permit as outlined in section 18 of the noise control exemption policy. And I do believe you have those 2 on-table items.
Thank you.
So the criteria that was not met, as outlined in the Bowen Island Lodge covenant, is section 3D of the operating agreement. It states that the maximum duration of an assembly use event is 8 hours, and this application is from 1 until 10, a total of 9 hours. And section 5C, which states that outdoor events held on a Saturday will be held only between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. And this application is an exemption until 10 p.m. The criteria not met, as outlined in the noise control exemption policy as it relates to staff approving permits, is in section 18, where the policy requires 80% of the predetermined neighborhood, pardon me, and the predetermined neighborhood properties to be successfully canvassed, and 80% of those successfully canvassed properties approve of the event. And this application received 29% approval from those who responded. It is for these reasons, weighted especially on the negative response from the neighborhood, that staff recommends to not approve the noise exemption application. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Shauna?
I'll just move the motion.
I would like to ask a question. I'm busy trying to read through the noise exemption bylaw here. Is there any time limits in our noise exemption bylaw as to length of an assembly event?
In our noise exemption
Bylaw?
bylaw? No.
Yeah. And for time for outside noise, and I thought there was. Yeah, and things like protests and stuff have to be, yeah. So you can't remember off the top when I'm really looking. Oh, here we go. No person shall make a cause,
David, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was looking for that. I find it puzzling that they would schedule an event that was outside of the, even if it's just like half an hour, like, why did they do that? And I guess I'm asking, were the neighbors opposing it, do we know, because it was outside? Or are they, was it other reasons? Because it's outside of those hours, you know, by 1 hour and a half an hour? Yeah, do we know that, or was that, I guess I'm trying to say is, because we approved another event, that was, I guess it was within the bucket, yeah. So what's going on here? A little bit of help, please.
Sure. I can speculate that it has to do with the type of event. I think that in previous applications, celebrations of life events have a great approval rating. I think in the past there have been issues during wedding events that, and so I think the neighbors are expressing concern through their notes and effort.
Okay, thank you.
Would you characterize the neighbors, they get regularly canvassed for these kinds of events, and that they know the covenant and support the covenant really well?
I would say yes.
Thank you.
Alison, did you find it?
Well, no, I can't, but I guess I'm sympathizing with the bride and groom a little bit. Finding another venue for a wedding on July the 6th at this time frame is not great.
This doesn't preclude the event from happening. This is just in regards to the noise exemption.
Oh, yeah. But I guess I just wondered if we could defer it for a week and have Hayre go back to the lodge and say, look, come back and, you won't have amplified noise except in, these few hours for the speeches. And the band doesn't need to be amplified, and can we create something where they can still have some music and whatever and carry on with their band?
Well, I think they could,
some hours.
if the council decides
Turn it down.
to turn it down, they can come back with a revised application as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're not saying, nix your whole thing and send it.
Just adjust
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Being that it's April and this event is in July, yes, there's certainly enough time to come back with a revised request.
Yeah, I do have sympathy for the event. It's brings a lot of money into Long Island and that sort of thing. And I'm sure they would be flexible on the hours. The problem I've got is with the count in the neighborhood. And the neighborhood controls what's going on there. And I think that's not a bad thing. It's communication, a little bit of a communication breakdown there. So, yeah, I don't have a problem turning it down because of the count only. And they can read it and they can deal with it.
Well, I do have a problem with turning it down because of the count, because there's 10 of the neighbors didn't respond.
Well, I can't do anything about that. We have a system.
Yeah, I know, but it either means they don't want to respond because they don't want the rest of their neighbors dumping on them for saying yes, or they don't care.
We can't
Well, it's
deal
a
with
system we have.
Okay, I know, it's not good.
I'd like to move the motion.
I'll second that.
And the motion is?
Whereas the noise exemption application made by the Bowen Island Lodge did not receive the minimum percentage of favorable responses for the noise control bylaw number 108/2004, but therefore be resolved that council not approve the application made by Bowen Island Lodge for an exemption to the noise control bylaw number 108/2004 for a wedding event to be held on Bowen Island Lodge, 380 Cardena Drive from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. on July 6th, 2019.
Thank you. Second? Any further discussion on this? I'll ask the question. All in favor? Okay, opposed?
I'm not sticking my hand up, so
Okay,
I'm
you're
going
in
to,
favor.
I know I'm being, but I haven't actually
It's
voted.
unanimous.
I'm pulling a rod.
No, Mayor, excuse me, but I do see there's a future issue here. People just say, I'm not voting for every event that comes up. I mean, that is going to create a situation whereby...
That's a vote just the same way as
No, we're talking about the citizens that aren't voting in the
No, the
community.
people who just don't vote. The people who
Live
just
down
don't
there,
vote.
yeah.
I mean, does that mean to say it'll paralyze every event taking place there?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the ongoing issue for me.
Tyler, back to you.
So, the requirement of the policy is that people are approached up to 3 times. And the percentage that was indicated here was simply the percentage of those that did respond. So it was the most favorable percentage possible in this scenario. And I have approached some residents in the area by letter who haven't been easily approached to see if there's a reason why. So maybe we can modify that list. If they're not bothered by noise, they don't care, and that's the reason they haven't responded, we may be able to have an opt-out type of process.
I'm not sure if that's our,
I don't think we can do that.
I think it's in the
it's
cover.
not our, yeah, it's not our
Okay.
jurisdiction to do that. It's up to the applicant to work with the neighbors. And I do think this is the neighbors speaking to a certain level of frustration about the covenant itself.
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit of a pushback. Thank you very much, Tyler.
Thank you.
Well done. First presentation to council.
Should we ask Tyler if he's missed being at council meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, poor Hope is typing away, you're like,
Okay, the next issue, Bob Robinson. Get best for last, right?
I don't know if it's best for last. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This was brought forward to Council in April, this resolution. I believe that,
In April?
Last year?
no, this April, in the spring. And then,
Well, if you could just give a high-level overview.
yeah, so what happened in the background was in October, Public Works was notified of a complaint through Bylaw Services about a set of stairs being built on Eagle Cliff Road. It's a different name of the road, but anyways, it's the beach access down to Eagle Cliff.
Cedar Road.
It's not even called Clear Road, but anyway, so there was a stop work order put on the set of stairs by Bylaw. The stairs,
And why was that though?
because there was no permit actually issued. So the way it should be done is the property owner comes into the municipal hall, they wanna apply for a permit, they fill out an application, Public Works looks at it, maybe makes some recommendations one way or the other, what to do, what you shouldn't do, and then we would issue a permit. After the permit's issued, then they could carry on with building or constructing something in the road right away. At that time, then there would be, we would go to council and go into an encroachment agreement, and council has to approve that. That wasn't done, stairs were built. Then in November, there was an application applied for in Public Works. We looked at it, we didn't agree with it because the actual stairs, the end of the stairs actually go over in front of another person's property. We made some recommendations, but that was turned down for the bottom side of the stairs. That was not accepted.
So I turned down by,
The applicant. Okay. So right now, the way it sits is the stairs are built. There's a sign on, because there's no insurance or anything on it, there's a sign that says stairs closed. And right now, there's 4 different ways to go here. Council can say, direct staff into removing the stairs. You can direct staff to remove the bottom part of the stairs that are encroaching in front of the property owners, and they can apply for a permit and carry on to build the stairs in front of their own property. Or council can approve the stairs and tell us to enter into an encroachment agreement.
Well, we can't ask them to remove the stairs on their own property, can we?
No, but
Just the part that's on.
there's quite a bit, so
No, I understand.
if you've seen the diagram I had, if it was in color, so the stairs in the green is in front of the property, I don't have a problem with that. The stairs that are red, that's actually encroaching in front of the other person's property. So you can do it 2 ways. You can say you have to remove all the stairs. You can ask them to remove the stairs in front of the neighbor's property and move it over in front of their property, or you can leave the stairs the way they are.
Bob, to be clear, both colors are within the municipal road allowance?
All of it is, yes, the green.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't afford color.
could I just ask what the pink is? Like it goes into pink and then, sorry.
So what I asked for is in the pink was, it was just a little bit of a safety factor so that you don't have any discrepancy, it's one.
All right.
Rob?
Bob, just because I don't have history on this stuff happening in the past, is there also an option to fine the property owners for not doing the permit, yada, 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 and then to leave it in place? Or is that...
I'm not sure, I think that's a bylaw question, I don't know.
So
Public Works has never done anything like that.
are there fines under the use of streets bylaw for
I don't think so.
using the street for, but we did find somebody who cut trees down and road along.
Maureen? Sorry, you do.
Just that I think the recommendation that is in your report is quite clear. I'll read the recommendation. It's whereas 1473 Eaglecliff has constructed a set of landscape stairs in the municipal road allowance in front of a neighbouring property without a permit. Therefore be it resolved that council order the removal of the portion of stairs in the road allowance in front of the neighbouring property, and that the stairs be moved to the road allowance in front of 1473 Eaglecliff, and that council direct staff to enter into an encroachment agreement with 1473 Eaglecliff. That sounds to me like a reasonable compromise to taking all of the steps.
You can't take all the steps, you only take the steps that are.
Take all of them
In green, yeah.
In what?
in the green area, if you look at the picture.
No, yeah, I guess. But not all of the steps. Is there any, do we have anything written anywhere about this? So, I'm sorry, Gabe. No, you go first.
I guess I'm concerned, so I did a site visit, and I appreciate all of the things that were done wrong, that, doing it without a permit and not stopping when it should have been stopped and all that sort of stuff. But the concern about it being in front of the neighbor's property, you know, this is very steep, there's nothing, it cannot be seen, there's nothing else that could be done with this road allowance in front of the neighbor's property, like, you know, it's not gonna be a parking space, it's not gonna be anything. So, you know, we have what we have, and to move it over would end up probably damaging more trees. I'm wondering if there's any other way of solving this, and I guess I'm asking staff if that include, you know, in some way of leaving it as it is, but having some sort of reparation made. I don't know what that could possibly be. I don't know.
There is fines in our traffic and streets bylaw, but not relating to an offense like this. It certainly would have been easier from staff's perspective if they'd come to us in the beginning.
Oh, of course.
So now we're trying to clean up a mess, and I really have no answer to that. We have received written complaints and concerns from the neighbors, which is one of the reasons. The neighbor, which was one of the reasons for Bob's recommendation. I honestly, Councillor Hopkins, I don't have an answer to that.
So we've also.
Back to my question. Okay, you gonna second it? Okay, it's on the table. Bob, back to my question. Is there anything anywhere on the books that says that an extended line through the, you shouldn't trespass on extended line through the?
No, there's nothing on the books.
No, so it's just something that's nebulous. So I really don't think the neighbor has an argument, because you can't see it from his house. I asked him when he was there, I said, you know, what is the issue? He said, well, I might put a driveway up there. I said, well, if you put a driveway up there, we'll take the stairs in for you. I mean, that's not an issue, that's not a valid.
If we issue an encroachment agreement, then we won't be able to do those
But
things.
you could put a condition.
Well, you put a condition on the encroachment
that
agreement.
if the neighbor or the municipality has a valid use for that property, that those stairs have to be removed on that portion of the property.
It's so steep, there's no possible.
No, it would never happen in a million years. Anyway, I don't have a problem with the stairs, I have a problem with the process, unfortunately. And that I don't know how to qualify that. I hate to take these stairs out, they're beautiful stairs. The option is gonna be extraordinarily expensive to make, I guess. So, that's sort of where I'm at. Just, I don't know where.
You've got a motion on the table.
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of at the same issue. If I would have been very happy to have granted this encroachment and allowing them in front of the neighbor's property and everything else, if, you know, the process had started at the beginning, if it come to the process. So we're damned if, you know, how do we approve something after the fact which sends a wrong message if there's no method of issuing a big fine or something to, you know, tear them out at this point and take down a couple of trees to move them. Just makes no sense because you're gonna disturb the land even more tearing them out and you're gonna make them, you know, probably create some erosion issues by taking the trees out.
Which is probably what the gamble of the property owners decided upon.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I think we're up to,
Oh, Rob, are you good?
Yeah, I mean, and that was my reason for asking if we can level a fine, because I'm definitely not in support of taking trees down over there to reroute this path. I mean, that's gonna do more damage, plus it's not on their property, so I don't think I could support a motion that would see trees taken down on a road right away that we don't have to allow. I am curious, like I haven't heard a yes or no on the fining thing yet, I don't know.
There is no fining.
There is no
There's no
fining.
fining in this instance.
Okay, back to this side. Maureen or Michael?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at this, and I just want to ask, well, there was a stop work order, the letter says, and then after the stop work order, the work continued, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Let's put it this way, they knowingly continued work after the stop work order.
I believe, I didn't do the stop work order, it was bylaw, but yes.
Well, there wasn't.
I don't know that we've got the full paper trail because I certainly was under the impression from the site visit that the applicant had told the contractor to stop work, and the contractor, and tidying up the mess and moving the stuff out, finished work.
That's what I was told too.
Yeah,
Of course, that's,
so-
we don't have a paper trail.
Right.
Was that told by the applicant?
Yes.
Maureen? Final one.
I guess I think there's been a lot of time spent on this, and staff have spent a lot of time trying to resolve the problems associated with this site. And we have a recommendation before us that staff have proposed as the best option they can come up with. And for that reason, I would be supporting the recommendation.
Yeah, okay, any further discussion?
Can I just make it clear that it's only removing the
Yes.
stairs in front of the neighboring property,
Correct.
not out of the pink area?
Right.
Correct.
That's what it says.
Well,
It says,
pink area.
So maybe there's a way of going down the pink area?
okay, I'm gonna ask a question, all in favor?
Just a clarification, so if we vote in favor of the staff report, does that then allow the proponent to take those trees down and rejig the path, or we're basically?
Good question.
I think he has to enter an agreement, right?
He has to enter, yes, that's correct. They have to enter into agreement with council. So any encroachment agreement, and I would suggest any plan will come forward to council for approval prior to any work being done.
But we're also saying that the stairs be moved to the road allowance in front, so.
Well, I suggest we change the recommendation that,
Just in the,
therefore be resolved that council order removal of the portion of the stairs in the road allowance in front of the neighboring property, and that an application and encroachment agreement come forward to council for consideration.
that's better, thanks. Thank you.
I'll accept that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we accept that amendment.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna ask a
what
question.
am I amending here? That the stairs be moved is being deleted?
Just in the dark red.
Hope, did you get what I said?
I believe I did, the last part of the sentence, be removed, is that, and,
In front of the
In front
neighboring
of the
property,
neighboring property.
and that,
and that an application and encroachment agreement come forward to council for consideration, and then the rest be deleted.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Okay.
Last question, all in favor?
Hate to do it, but.
So do I, Allison?
I don't think
I'm gonna be opposed.
Okay.
No, good for you, Allison.
that's a tough
That's it, that's not so bad.
Thank you, I didn't get a motion to throw on the table fast enough.
Huh?
Waste of
Didn't
time.
get a motion
Yeah.
to throw on the table
It's
fast.
been a lot of staff time involved.
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah, and there'll be a bit more.
All right, so we're gonna move down to new business, so I'm gonna go with David Hawk and, thanks, Bob. David Hawk and Metro. Vancouver.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Rob, although Gary and I did go to a meeting of the Tsawwassen First Nation, their 10-year entrance into Metro Vancouver and their 10-year treaty celebration, and there are other mayors there, and Metro Vancouver, so Gary and I are in a picture with a Pacific dogwood tree that was a gift from Metro Vancouver to the Tsawwassen First Nation, and Chief Williams was very happy he picked it up and carried it, he's very strong.
Yeah.
No reports.
That's my report, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we get to see the picture?
I don't
I don't know who took it.
Trustees, Fast and Kale.
Well, did you want to give a quick
yes.
update on the Metro meeting? It was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very long meeting, especially after one of the councillors pulled 15 different items out of the consent agenda. But a couple of things that came out that may be of interest to us. One was the cabins at Belcara Park, which had been basically over the years have been used for living quarters. And what I can report back on them moving forward, their general policy is that any metro land, buildings or land needs to be open to the public and it cannot be used for private services.
Application.
For application. So I just thought I'd mention that because we do have some property like that. Bit of concern about industrial land costs, pushing out industry because of other more a bit of too permissive uses of industrial land, driving up the cost of the land and industry being pushed out. George Massey Tunnel, big project coming forward, and expression of interest in seeing transit and not having as wide of a potential tunnel being built there. And a bit about cannabis emission control, and that came down to that they didn't want to specifically focus on cannabis, but on general emission control of all agricultural land products instead of being very prescriptive on certain areas that ALR land will be used for.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Sue Ellen and Michael.
Sure, I'll go briefly. In your package, in section 13.25, there's a couple of things in there. One of them is the highlights, which I reported to you last council meeting, so I won't refer to that again. And I forget what the other one is. Anyway, there's two of them there. Sorry, must be a little late. I also wanted to let people know that our MLA, Jordan Sturdy, has requested a meeting with the minister about the Islands Trust. So Islands Trust staff have been required to provide a bunch of information. As I understand it, the information has been pretty much the PowerPoints and slides that they presented in their joint meeting with BIM. And so that is underway, and I wondered if council wanted to clarify for the ministry that Bowen Island Council is not considering leaving the Islands Trust.
No.
Because we've passed two motions that could be construed perhaps that way, or they might confuse the ministry because we've been asked for information and staff reports, and that the municipal requisition be looked at for fairness and those kinds of things, which are all, to me, perfectly reasonable things that one would ask, especially after 20 years. And so I wondered whether council thought it was worthwhile passing a confirmation tonight.
That's a long debate and it's getting late.
That council confirmed that leaving the Islands Trust is not being considered. Simple.
Pretty straightforward, I'll second that.
Councillor Fast, can you read that one more time?
Well, that Bowen Island Municipal Council confirmed that leaving the Islands Trust is not being considered by council.
Is that?
At this time.
By council, period.
At this time?
No, that's not my motion.
Ever?
I mean,
This is for the purposes of clarifying council, Bowen Island Council's position for the meeting that's going to happen this week, next week. Soon.
I don't know why we have to do that.
Well, we have not been formally advised by our MLA that he's having a meeting with the
No.
minister, and
we have no background.
So I'm not sure that that's appropriate.
I'm bringing you the news as a member of council, of Bowen Council, and I'm also on the executive committee, so staff report those kinds of things to executive committee because we direct them.
I think it would be useful for clarification to be provided to our NLA. I'm sure that there are conversations that have taken place with him, members of the community, and it's out there in the community that at least some members of council are entertaining discussions of potentially leaving the Islands Trust. And if that's not the case, then we should provide some clarity to, perhaps NLA Sturdy doesn't need it, but certainly Selena Robinson would benefit from some clarification.
I don't think that should be part of the process.
What do you mean?
We're in a process here where we're trying to get some numbers from the Islands Trust and trying to find out about our requisition and that sort of thing. Right.
Yeah, that's underway, and it'll come to council about a week before the June council meeting, because that's when the Islands Trust Council agenda is published, and I forwarded that information to Hope, so she knows to expect it.
Can I just add a personal question? New resolution shouldn't be added without unanimous consent of council at the beginning of the agenda. So I would suggest maybe this is a notice of motion for our next council
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, that's fine.
The whole, yeah, oh, you just listed it as a notice of motion.
And may I just get clarification, when is Minister Sturdy meeting?
I don't know the exact date. I don't think Islands Trust staff did either. The request had come in, they had the request, Tuesday last week, I think.
The CAO contacted me last Monday to let me know that they were required to provide a briefing paper to the ministry.
And did any member of council contact Minister Sturdy, Jonathan Sturdy,
Yeah, I spoke to Jordan Sturdy.
regarding Islands Trust?
Yes. Yes, why not?
He's our MLA.
His RMLA. I asked him whether he was aware of correspondence that had taken place and whether he'd been contacted directly by any individuals, and he said he had.
Was it clear that there was no council resolution to the effect of we're thinking of severing from the Islands Trust?
There was no question of any council resolutions. No council business as such was discussed. It was whether he was aware of correspondence on the island. He said yes, he is aware of it. But he knows. I think if there was a council resolution, he would have certainly been advised. And there is no council resolution. I tell you what he is aware of. He is aware, he is aware that we have forwarded that request to Islands Trust. That he is aware. Right? So that he is aware. Totally aware. He's in that picture. He knows that.
Well, maybe it would be useful to make him aware as well of the notice of motion for our next council meeting.
Mm-hmm. True enough. Is that it, Sue?
Yes, because of the time, I'm going to let MLA Sturdy know about my notice of motion.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael, have you got anything?
Just briefly, I've been in touch with Paul Brent. Paul Brent is a trustee from Saturna. He's also sort of vice chair on the financial advisory, and we're just trying to unify some numbers, very simple numbers actually, because our numbers don't all gel. For example, the Island Trust area population since 2000 up to date. That was one thing because the figures seem to be a little bit at odds. And we were also looking at the Island Trust headcount since 2000 up to date. Now, I've been in touch with Russ Hotson-Pillar, who's Kathy's equivalent, their CAO, and he said, as discussed on the phone, in order for your work item to be considered, you'll need to get endorsement from the executive committee. Please refer the matter to them. Endorsement from Bowen Council would be helpful. This is a normal and regular business practice for the trust. So what I'm actually just asking, if you could just endorse.
Notice of motion?
Sorry?
Same process as we just went through.
Well, we can put that if you like, a notice of motion. What I'm asking for is that the information that requested is a population within the Islands Trust by year since 2000, and the head count in total EFTEs since 2000 by year. I did add in terms of the 2000, the EFTEs, is that
What is an EFT?
the employee full-time equivalents, or FTEs, full-time equivalents, that given the records prior to 2010 are in paper form, I mean, frankly, it's laborious to find it to go year by year. So if we could just have it for the year 2000 and 2005, and then 2010 to 2019 on a yearly basis, to save the amount of work that the financial officer has to go through. So really, what the information that I was requesting and the endorsement from council that we could ask this question, that I could ask this question, is a request for the population with Islands Trust by the year 2000, Recognising, by the way, 2016 was a census, but in essence the figures as generally circulated by the Trust. And headcount, or EFTEs, between 2000 and 2010, just 2 years, 2000 and 2005, and then from 2000 and 2019 on a yearly basis. So that's just the request that I'm asking Council to endorse, to put forward as he requested. His request was
We're getting
endorsement from Bowen Council would be helpful.
So that's a notice of motion for the next meeting?
It's a notion of motion. It's a notion of motion. Or if anyone feels it's just he said it would be helpful for him if those two questions were endorsed by council for me to put forward to him. If you want it as a notice of motion,
It's, what time is it? And we've got a closed meeting to go back to.
Yeah.
And I think some of the things you're asking for could be asked for which would get the same result in a slightly different set of facts. Like, just census years for population and stuff like that.
If he has it, then that's great. I don't think the first one is. I think the first one is really straightforward. We're just trying to get the agreed numbers. So if you want it as a notion of motion, a notice of motion, I will certainly. Sorry, a notice of motion, I will certainly accept that.
Okay. I had one more quick thing. Just that
Well,
I'll be attending.
We got to finish with that.
Can I just ask that you would endorse us so we can try and get these numbers together?
That's not for tonight, that's for 2 weeks.
Or say, all right, we'll set the notice of motion. Do we have to get approval for the notice of motion, or will that
No,
notice
we'll
of
just
motion?
note in our minutes that you'll reflect as a notice of motion.
Councillor, can you forward me?
I will
out there?
add all the wording
Thank
so we don't trip over it.
Last thing, quick thing, I'll be attending the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention this weekend. And as a member of Islands Trust, but I also wear my Bowen Island hat. There's lots of good communities there. Is anybody else from this group going? And if anybody wants me to take any particular, keep an eye out for this, or if you get a chance to vote on that, let me know. That's it.
Thank you.
May I ask a question of the Island Trust?
Sure.
Representatives. I've had a couple correspondence on electric ferries, and I know we've been talking at BIMTAC about it, and it's sort of going all around here. And so my question would be, if we wanted to get some support and a working from the Islands Trust on encouraging BC Ferries to move ahead with electrified ferry services, how would we go about asking them for that?
Can I had an item I was going to bring up, and it's going to be on the next council agenda. No,
I would like to answer it.
Well, I was thinking we don't need to, the ferry commissioner's already done it in his report. Telling BC Ferries to come up with a plan to move towards electric.
We had an idea that once our island plan was complete, that I would go through it and pick out the places that we could work together with the Islands Trust. They're partway through their strategic planning process, but they have also just passed the declaration of a climate emergency and a bunch of steps under that. And so as part of my areas that we could work together in report and request to the Islands Trust, I'll bring that forward.
Thank you.
And I'll also talk about it at AVICC, because I think I've heard it and I've been promoting it at Islands Trust as well.
So Islands Trust have indicated to us that for us to advocate on their behalf, they would need a resolution from council. So we did talk about putting this on probably our next council agenda.
Sure.
All right, Maureen.
Metro Parks. We met on April the 3rd, and our committee is still gelling. So we also had items pulled from consent and so forth. We spent quite a bit of time getting an overview of the Burns Bog, that great big carbon sink that's in Delta, and some of the issues around its care and feeding. The park staff are getting underway with their greenways planning, and there's an opportunity there for Bowen to be involved. The draft management plan for Widgeon Marsh is being produced, and there's going to be a lot of public engagement, education on that new park in the coming summer through into the early fall. It's a glorious park. It's absolutely stunning. It's not yet open to the public. I've been once on a tour. We're going again in July to see what more has been done there. It's right at Pitt Lake. And the acquisitions planning is proceeding, so there are a number of purchases that will be coming to the committee and to the board over the next while. There's roughly 6 million still in the kitty for purchases of land this year. That's my report.
All right, thank you. Where is that park in?
Widgeon Marsh, and it's in Coquitlam and adjacent to Pitt Lake.
Oh, nice.
So what's the other part? Maple Ridge? Would that be possible?
That would be Maple
No.
Ridge, I think.
Local
Because you're over.
No.
It should be Port Coquitlam, no? You're too far over? I
Port
don't know.
Coquitlam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maple Ridge is on the other side.
Yeah.
Very lovely.
All right, Allison.
Haven't had a meeting,
Okay.
so, but I do know that there's looking at partnership with Mogo, for band pools, use.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I love Modo. Use it all the time. Vancouver Island.
All right, thank you. So back to 3.4, Allison.
Page 31.
Yeah, I pulled that, not because I have any problem at all with what Sophie is suggesting. So I might have had a small typo or two, but my main reason for pulling it is, can we ask staff for a report on how many FOI requests we've had?
I think
and
it's a darn good idea.
how many hours we've spent on it? And can we ask for a general idea of what people are asking for? I mean, related to X or related to Y, and, you know, just how much, because I think, it's a public information piece for people to know that staff are spending, 10 or 20 hours a week answering FOI requests, and,
But is that number pretty high?
well, it is according to Sophie's report. I don't know, I'm just guessing, that they're spending, a lot of time on responding, and I'm surprised we hadn't, I thought we had actually been charging for copies and stuff like that, so I was quite surprised that we hadn't.
We were at a certain point.
Oh, until it stopped, yeah, okay.
Any thought?
Yeah, all right, so we should, but I don't know whether your hourly charges are realistic.
Well, the hourly charges are laid out in the FOR bylaw, so we don't really have any choice.
For the provincial.
Correct.
So we need to move the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
Seconded.
That bylaw 482, site is voted on municipality freedom of information and protection of privacy, bylaw number 482, be read a first, second, and third time.
Second. Last question, all in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. That brings that to an end. Okay, so we're going to, does anybody need like a 2 or 3 minute break, or do you want to slip right into this?
I think it's a good idea. Just
Ron was like,
Close meeting.
Question, but not sure if it's
Oh my God, I just forget all the time. Go ahead.
I don't know if you guys can answer this, but it keeps coming up if there is a mechanism for leaving the islands trust.
No.
There,
There you go.
there is.
The province has syndicated a number of years ago, when the 2-3 councils ago when this was brought up, that the first step that they would require is a community opinion vote to see if there's any
opinion or referendum?
No community opinion, because a referendum would be non-binding, so that's why under our legislation it's called a community opinion vote, to see if there's
willingness to address the issue.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
So, and then a community
referendum after that.
Yeah. It's effectively a non-binding referendum.
A non-binding.
Yeah, correct.
But then we have to do an actual referendum, presumably.
Well, the first step is the province would like to see if there's any significant interest in leaving the trust before they proceed. But this information is a number of years old.
Yeah.
How many years old are I?
It was Jack Adelor's council, so.
Somewhere between 2011 and 2014, don't ask me precisely when.
It's over
Your
there.
pins are a few.
Yeah. Plus or minus. Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. Take care, Carmen.